special accommodations for workers aged 65 and above. As we are all passing through COVID-19 together, we are all taking our precautions for our loved ones. Today, these precautions are taken mostly to protect our elders in our families. Workers aged 65 and higher have a higher percentage of dying because of COVID-19. A significant percentage of individuals aged 65 and over have comorbidity conditions, which is causing their death from the virus. A person's age and immunity have a strong influence on whether the person will be able to defeat the virus or not. According to Clunge, over 95 of these deaths occurred in those older than 60 years. Several psychological changes associated with the aging led to a reduction in the natural immune function of the body. We, as a team, affirm the resolution that these people should get special accommodations to protect them from catching the virus, which will most likely lead them to their death. Given the increased risk of severe complications and even death, US organizations need to act morally by giving them special accommodations. These workers should be allowed to work from home to lessen the risk. Tamer, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Hania. So I want to present the following definitions. Pandemic is an epidemic that spreads in various nations and continents. According to Oxford, refers to symptoms that indicates an underlying illness that is apparent to a patient. The common COVID-19 symptoms include fever, chills, headache, and dry cough. The framework for this round should be that the people of the age 65 and above get better accommodation and immunities, then the curve will be flattened. The reason for this framework is to flatten the curve. Fewer people need to be infected by the virus. However, older people lack the immunity to fight the infection, and they would get infected in huge numbers. And Hani are going to present the next two contentions.
Thank you, Tamer. With the changing characteristics of the COVID-19 virus and the asymptomatic contamination causes, it has become essential for safeguarding the people with generally low immunity rates. Thus, US organizations should take steps to ensure the safety of the workers who are above 65 by providing them with special accommodations. Our argument is that the chances of contamination with COVID-19 virus are higher for segregations and above that age limit, owing to their lower immunity rates. And that's the reason special accommodations should be made for such workers to ensure their health and well-being. The evidence to support this is that a reading done by NCBI suggested to provide some guaranteed health insurance income protections, at least after specified periods of participation in covered employment. To make it easier for the senior workers to afford the basic needs. In this time of the crisis that has been created by the pandemic, the workers aged 65 and above should be given special health facilities to ensure their safety. This matters because aged workers are taking the risk of continuing their service even during the pandemic conditions, and thus, in order to secure the company's interests, it's become essential for the US organizations to take care of these senior people by making some special arrangements, which can save them from getting contaminated. Special accommodations for the senior workers can also guarantee the well-being of the nation as well, because if these vulnerable people are protected from contamination, then the number of affected can come under control. Our argument is that if special arrangements are made to protect the senior workers from the risk of getting contaminated, then that can help the nation in checking the virus from spreading further and affecting the citizens. The evidence to support this is the declaration of Dr. Hans-Henry P. Kluge, the regional director of WHO for Europe, where he said that once, Older adults are a significantly increased risk from COVID-19, and thus taking additional measure for protecting the workers who are age 65 and above seem to be the most logical decision. This matters because it is important for us to not disregard the health needs of the old people because they have equal contribution in the organization where they work just of the younger workforce. Moreover, it is important for the US organization to step measure to protect those who are most likely to get affected by COVID-19 virus so that the entire nation can fight this war against the pandemic in an effective and an impactful manner. Tamer, you can go ahead and start with contention 3.
With the increasing infections across the country and globally, despite the measures taken so far, the healthcare sector will soon be overwhelmed by this number. Therefore, it is necessary to take care for older people who are higher risk if they contract coronavirus through special accommodation. We urge you that the people of the age of 65 and above cannot fight the virus as well as younger people. Therefore, if not protected, they will get infections in more significant numbers, and the hospitals may not have the capacity to provide them with the necessary care if they are overwhelmed by large numbers. The evidence to support this argument is from CDC, which indicates that currently 8 out of 10 deaths reported in the US have been of adults of 65 years and above. From these statistics, it becomes evident that it's highly unlikely for people in this age bracket to survive when they got COVID-19. The need to provide extra and special accommodation is essential. This matters because the country has a considerable population of people in that age group who are still at work, traveling, or living alone with no extra help. These people are also parents, a relative of guardians to the younger generation who might infect them easily. Moving to the next point, providing special accommodation to the people of age 65 and above will help ease the tension among them as they worry that they cannot get basic needs from stores without risking getting the virus. Our argument is if the special accommodation and extra protection, there will be minimized exposure. It should be noted that COVID-19 exposed the health, economic, and social vulnerabilities of aging people. This is an important matter because the COVID-19 pandemic has exposed society to health and economic problems. If the older population is not affected, there will be an increased challenge to caution them from financial issues that will arise in society. To conclude this debate, we affirm that senior workers of age 65 and above should be accorded special accommodation. The current COVID-19 pandemic has affected people all over the world, but it's quite severe on the aging people population. The need to protect this population is based on the fact they have low immunity, underlying disease, and chronic illness. Therefore, the aging population would get infected fast and their survival rates are low. Uh, Let me know if you guys have any questions.
Okay. I understand that workers and people over 65 years old are more vulnerable to the disease. However, there are many younger Americans between the ages of, let's say, like 1 month to 64 that have underlying health conditions that also make them vulnerable. Shouldn't U.S. organizations accommodate all workers who have underlying health conditions instead of a specific age group?
Okay, so older people who contract the coronavirus will need like hospitalization and intensive care, and due to that, likely it's gonna be like overrate the health sector. So yeah, so
Okay, so
this is the point.
playing off that point, so do you think specifically towards the people who are over 65, are you planning on providing special accommodations for everyone over 65 or just those over 65 with underlying health conditions?
I believe everyone over 65 because they do have uh, lower immunity systems, which can lead them to their death. And I believe they deserve to be protected.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions that we have for now.
Thank you.
Okay. So the main priority for many businesses is to maintain profit and high stock prices, not provide special services to certain employees. Though a company may have responsibility to create a safe working environment for its employees, their ultimate duty is to take actions that maximize profit and stock prices for their shareholders. Therefore, we negate the resolution that U.S. organizations must give special accommodations to workers aged 65 and over. Robert will be presenting the following definitions.
All right, thank you. All right, now I will present the following definitions, obviously. The first word I would like to define is accommodation. Accommodation is defined by the Oxford English Dictionary to mean a convenient arrangement or a convenient settlement, like a job assignment, for example. The word accommodation could also mean a compromise. The second word I would like to define is what constitutes U.S. organizations. U.S. organizations are defined by the presenters before you to mean for-profit corporations, businesses, public or private, and any regulatory agencies in the United States. The framework for this round should be that if we as the negative can prove that the costs from providing special accommodations to workers ages 65 and over outweigh the benefits, then you should vote no on requirements of these special services. The reason this is the best framework for the round is that it will not be biased. It will be balanced. We must leave our emotions out of the and focus solely on the quantifiable and objective costs and benefits. We must make decisions based on what is best for society as a whole, not what is best for a specific demographic. And now I'll hand it over to Lawrence to go over a couple observations before laying out our first two contentions.
Thank you, Robert. We would like to present the following observations. According to Census Bureau and Bureau of Labor Statistics, 20% of Americans over the age of 65 are employed or looking for work. That is a total of 10.6 million people and represents a 57-year high. According to CDC, 51.1 million adults over the ages of 65 have a higher risk of developing a serious illness. However, 41.4 million adults between the ages of 18 to 64 are also at risk. So beginning with the contentions, we argue that special accommodations should be given to any individuals with underlying health conditions. Underlying health conditions can be found from any person regardless of age. The evidence to support this comes from the George Kuchel of University of Connecticut. He states that an 80-year-old who is otherwise healthy and not frail might be more resilient in fighting off infection than a 60-year-old with many chronic conditions. Furthermore, according to the CDC, 41.4 million adults between the ages of 18 and 64 are also at risk of developing a serious illness. A senior citizen might have diabetes, while an infant might have asthma. A young woman with breast cancer will be more at risk than a healthy senior who is 65 years old. This matters because requiring U.S. organizations to give special accommodations to seniors over the age of 65 will ignore the younger population who might also have underlying health conditions. If this proposal becomes a success, employees who are under 65 years old will still be at risk of getting coronavirus. Consequently, in order to create a safe working environment for everyone at risk, U.S. organizations would be forced to spend an undesirable amount of money to provide all employees with underlying health conditions special services. As a result, these massive cost issues will place an undue burden on the U.S. economy. We argue that special accommodations may be too costly for U.S. organizations. If employees who are 65 and older do not return to work, many U.S. organizations will be understaffed. The evidence to support this comes from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. According to the BLS, 20% of Americans over the age of 65 are either employed or looking for work. In other words, 10.6 million people would need special accommodations. Moreover, organizations will have to continue to pay their senior employees salaries and benefits. The company also has to hire new employees to cover the understaffed positions. During the post-pandemic era, it will be too costly for companies to retrain the employees that are 65 and over. This matters because many organizations will increase their expenses while trying to maintain a positive net income. Understaffed companies who also need to pay salary and benefits will be at risk of going bankrupt. If companies go bankrupt, millions of jobs will be lost and countless Americans will be harmed by the noble but ill-advised intentions. Robert will present you the next couple contentions.
Thank you, Lawrence. So the next argument that I would like to make is that the death rate for people in their 60s is very low compared to people over 70. Thus, it would appear inefficient and wasteful, in fact, to spend an excess amount of money on employees between the ages of 65 and 69 when they do not necessarily need it. The evidence to support this comes from Neil Ferguson of Imperial College London. According to Ferguson, only 4% of patients in their 60s died after contracting coronavirus. In contrast, over double that, nearly 9% of patients over the age of 70 died after contracting coronavirus. This matters because the data clearly shows that the death rate for people in their 60s is quite low. First of all, a worker has to contract coronavirus. With proper social distancing guidelines and measures that will be implemented, just general ones, the odds of that happening in the workplace are minimal at best. Furthermore, even if an employee in their 60s happens to get infected somehow, they have over a 96% chance of survival. In essence, providing special accommodations to workers between the ages of 65 and 69 would be needlessly wasting company resources. Finally, the last argument that I would like to make is that giving special accommodations to workers over 65 will result in age discrimination. In other words, assigning certain jobs to individuals over 65 simply to provide an allegedly safer work environment is unlawful discrimination on the basis of age. Moreover, this will not be beneficial for other workers who may be better qualified for these positions. The evidence to support this comes from the US Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. According to the Age Discrimination and Employment Act, it is prohibited to discriminate against workers who are 40 or older. In essence, this law bans discrimination in any aspect of employment, whether it be hiring, firing, or in this case, job assignments or reassignments. And when I refer to accommodations in this argument, I mean in terms of giving an elderly person a job over a younger person who is more qualified, simply because it will allegedly be safer for the older person. Now, this evidence matters because this law implies that providing special services to workers over 65 in the form of job assignments would unjustly discriminate against workers between the ages of 40 and 64. Furthermore, this favoritism would prevent more qualified candidates from getting a job they deserve. If less efficient employees are assigned jobs that could be better done by younger workers, the company misses out on not only potential profits, but also crucial labor cost savings, which unnecessarily damages the company. In the end, we have presented 4 strong arguments, which were that age does not determine who has underlying health conditions, costs will be much too high, the death rate for people in their 60s is quite low, and age discrimination should not prevent younger Americans from finding a job they deserve. After doing a cost-benefit analysis, we have determined that it is neither economically feasible or beneficial to provide special services for everyone in the requested age group. Therefore, we ask that you please negate the resolution of providing special accommodations to workers ages 65 and older. Thank you for listening, and now I would like to open it up to any questions.
Although all age groups are at risk of contracting COVID-19, in our argument is that ages 65 and older people face significant risk of developing the severe illness if they contract the disease due to like psychological changes that come with aging and potential underlying health conditions. So don't you believe that these people deserve to be, even if they have this 1% risk, don't you believe that these people should be accommodated at home, not stop working, so the economy won't like crash like you guys are arguing? They deserve to be at home working, since they're also paying taxes and insurance, which will eventually cover for them.
I agree that in an ideal world, if we had infinite amounts of money, we could provide all these special accommodations for them to be safe and sound and no one would get hurt and there'd be no drawbacks. The fact is there are trade-offs. If the cost to small businesses, which create over 64% of private sector jobs, if the cost to them is too high from letting workers work from home, if that increases labor costs to a point where profit margins for small businesses are in the negative, the small businesses may have to close down their business. And if that happens, many more Americans in those jobs will suffer and lose their job. They won't be able to provide for their family, and they might get evicted from their apartments, and they might be setting up a homeless tent on the street. So of course I would like to help all the elderly people, but in this case, I would argue that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Okay, so you guys said giving a special accommodation to the people who are 65 and above will affect the economy. Do you guys think it's going to affect the economy more than if they got an intensive care from the hospitals and like maximize their capacity? Is it gonna cost more?
Good question. If you look at the overall picture, with more patients and casualties in a hospital, with medical expenses increasing, hospitals and government funding will provide, and taxpayer money will cover most of the costs. While if you think about the overall picture of small and large businesses in the United States, the impact that COVID-19 has impacted these businesses has increased. The impact of these small businesses and large companies are extremely COVID-19 has impacted small and large businesses more than hospitals. Across the United States, almost all hospitals are never overrun with patients. The most we've seen in New York was about 75%. So the cost of funding these hospitals is nowhere close to the impact of small and large businesses affected during the pandemic.
Any other questions?
We're good.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for listening, and I hope you guys enjoy your summer.